Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. Talking fantasy football once again today. Play DraftKings Best Ball. If you haven't done it, there's plenty of contests at any stakes open in the lobby right now, and I want to dig into some news that's been floating around, either guys who might be suspended, guys who retired, some positional battles. I thought, who better to do this with than Bobby Gomes? What's going on, man? Can I borrow $1 million?
You can, whenever you want, Pat. I can loan it out to you whenever you need it. Yeah, ton of news going on. It's been a great week. Obviously, it's a little downtime within like the best ball streets. Still grinding it out though. Ready to talk some football with you.
Well, I see behind you, you have the, is that your certificate? Is that what they give you when you win a Millionaire Maker? They give you a certificate?
So this was like way back when, 2014. They don't make these anymore, but yeah, they used to give these out. So yeah, it's nice. It's a little keepsake I have, I would say.
I'll take the money. I think that would be the good keepsake. The certificate's nice. Did they give you a novelty check of any kind?
Oh yeah, no, we got the check. It's a Happy Gilmore check for show, but cash came too.
Well, that's good. They paid you out. That's great. Play on DraftKings, everyone. This show is sponsored by DraftKings, so I recommend DraftKings. Smash the like button while you're out there as well, and subscribe to the Mayo Media newsletter. Have some football stuff in it this week if you want to go check that out. It's specifically designed to Week 17 correlation plays, easier schedules. Justin Herzig and I went through that on last week's show. If you hit the description, you get the full complement of the Pat Mayo Experience Fantasy Football Draft Package, obviously all free, and the links are down there. So go check those out and catch up on everything. Let's jump into it right away, because when I was asking you for things to talk about, you want to talk about Trey Lance and Jimmy G, which I thought was somewhat surprising because I was just convinced that Trey Lance was just going to be the guy, but now it looks like they might bring Jimmy G back at reduced money. Is this for certain that we're getting Trey Lance?
I think we're getting Trey Lance. The issue is when you bring Jimmy G back, it's like, we have to question the leash on Trey Lance, which I think the leash should be there, right? Like they want Trey Lance to be the guy. Jimmy Garoppolo, in my opinion, kind of dusty, but I just don't understand why you would bring him back if you want him to be a backup and a mentor. I think Trey Lance is the guy, though, but you still have to question what his leash will be if the performance isn't what if the 49ers believe the performance isn't up to par. But I think he definitely starts week one.
Yeah, I think he starts week one, and you have to give him some sort of leash, I would imagine. Everyone should go to runthesims.com right now. If you just enter your email address, you for sure have access to the projection builder for the year. So every single team, you can go through that, set your own market shares, make your own projections. That service at runthesims.com is completely free to use. I like going around and messing around with what is going on in terms of, hey, let's see if we get a full 17 game slate from Trey Lance. What's his rushing share going to be? How do you think this affects, if it is going to be all Trey Lance? Let's go on that assumption. How does this affect the skill guys on San Francisco? Because I think Debo is in a very interesting situation at the moment. Like when we're thinking about ADP, when it comes down to like, where are you seeing him going, at least in early DraftKings best balls? Like, is he someone that you see going above where you have the threshold to take him, or do you think like sky's the limit here? Because I've had this conversation with Jeff Ratcliffe already that I would prefer he doesn't run the ball, because if he doesn't run the ball, at least I have this target base where I know he's going to score the same every week. And he went on this crazy run of scoring a touchdown every single week. But if he doesn't do that last year, we're not considering him in the same light. And touchdowns can be pretty fickle.
Yeah, Debo ran extremely hot. Obviously, when you're getting carries out of the backfield as a running back and scoring at the rate he was, I think there's room for regression. Obviously, you had the contract issues, stuff like that. He's trying to hold out, or was trying to hold out. Right now I have him as the 7th ranked wide receiver in terms of just ADP. I don't really want to go positional ADP. I think that's too hot for me. I'm going to kind of be more off that. I'm more interested in Brandon Ayuk. I think he's an interesting stack piece with Trey Lance. Really came on towards the end of the year last year. And you're getting value on Ayuk, where I think you're paying a premium for Deebo Samuel at the moment.
Do you really, is Trey Lance one of the, obviously you want to correlate and you want to stack, but is Trey Lance one of the few quarterbacks that you don't necessarily have to stack everyone up with? Because if he hits his massive upside, a lot of it has to be due to rushing.
So for me, I usually look to passing props, like 200 yards. Can he carry the 100-yard bonus on 2 receivers? Probably not. He has the rushing equity. Also has a good Week 17 game, which I think is kind of flying under the radar, right? 49ers at Raiders, you're in a dome. If he really progresses throughout the season, I think he can be a good option there. And especially when you look to like what these formats are, like taking the rushing equity at QB, I think that's more of a premium now in today's DFS. So I like the upside of Trey Lance. I like the ceiling. And I don't mind stacking him. My preferred option would be Ayuk.
So, yeah, just looking at it right now, Trey Lance, in terms of the runthesims.com projections, have him at quarterback number 11 for the year. Does that sound about right if he plays all 17 games? Or do you think it's obviously upside is higher than that? But if we're just going to project someone out, does that sound about where he would fall?
It sounds about where he would fall, but I think the upside, like you said, he could fall. He could finish like 7 or 8, I would say. So maybe 7 or 8 is kind of hot. I'd say 8 or 9 in that range as a ceiling possibly, which I think is good value at where you're currently getting him.
Well, yeah, you're getting him basically around pick 90-ish. At least that's where on average that he's going. And that's somewhat behind like Kyler Murray, Burrow, Brady. I do think that he's probably a better candidate for my teams than someone like Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow does feel like he's going a bit overdrafted, but his stacks make a ton of sense. And he's obviously coming off the fantastic season. It's just fantasy-wise, I don't know, it seems like he needs to be so good in terms of touchdown rate in order to be up there, where Lance doesn't even need to do that. Like, Lance is a lot like Jalen Hurts. He can be the guy who has 2 fantasy points at halftime and have 40 after the break.
Yeah, that stack is just extremely expensive too, the Cincinnati stack. It makes sense, obviously, right? Like everyone's on this week 17, Bills at Bengals. Like that seems like a game like you'd want to stack up if you make it to that final 1,000-person tournament. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. But when you go to that Bengals, what's interesting about the two teams, like if you look at this from a macro perspective, like the entire best ball season, the Bills value seems like the chalk, and then the Bengals seems like the high-end expensive plays. If we talk about like the Bengals, you're playing a premium with Chase, Higgins, and Burrow. I don't know if that's the route I kind of want to go. I also think that would also be pretty popular. Like I feel like I would rather take shots on other QBs that are a little bit lower and not pay a premium at QB or for the stack. So going to a guy like Trey Lance wouldn't be like Trey Lance, Ayuk, that type of stack would be something that I'd have interest in relative to paying the premium. On the Bills side, the Bills are going to be extreme value. Gabriel Davis seems like the chalk of what would be the entire slate. Last year, I think it was Cam Akers, and he tore his Achilles like a week in a training camp or a couple days in a training camp. I don't think I'd be too interested in getting to a guy like Davis. Just being underweight on a guy like Davis and the Bills chalk would be a route I would take. That's pretty much, I know I kind of got off on a tangent there, but just kind of looking at that game in general and just looking at the Cincinnati Bengals and like the starting point being week 17, it's crazy to just start from the back end of a situation like this, but that's kind of like where I'm going.
Well, let's talk Gabriel Davis, because I actually made a bet with Herdzig last week on the show, just overall points this season, Brendan Cooks versus Gabe Davis, and I took the Brendan Cooks side. I just think that's a more reliable path to go down, and you're getting him for cheaper at the moment, although I can see some steam building for Brendan Cooks as we progress throughout the season. I don't think that the Texans will end up trading him. If they didn't trade him last year, I don't see the reason to trade him this year, if that's the organizational philosophy that they're going with. It just feels like the bust potential for Gabriel Davis is just too high for where he's going right now. I know that we're going to see, like the last time that we saw him, he was the best player on the field fantasy-wise. It was fantastic had you have taken Gabriel Davis in his 4 touchdowns. It just feels like there's going to be a lot of weeks where it's really easy to get phased out week to week in this Bills offense, just with this myriad options that they have going on. What if it is a Josh Allen 3 rushing touchdown type game? You really think that we're going to see those few games from Steph Diggs where he's just going to do nothing? Like, How high have you seen Gabe Davis go in drafts?
Right now, I have him wide receiver 24, and I have Cooks wide receiver 26, and I'd rather take the shot on Cooks with the usage at wide receiver 26 over Gabe Davis, just because like we've seen it last year, where Brandon Cooks was like a staple for a lot of these high-end cash game players on DK. Just with that usage rate, he really fits DK's scoring. Gabe Davis is going to come in. He's going to be the chalk value. A lot of people steaming up Gabe Davis, and I would just rather go with someone who projects relatively similar, or I have projecting relatively similar, in a much less ownership clip for Brandon Cook. So I'd definitely be on the Brandon Cook side.
Could you actually build a Josh Allen stack and not have Gabriel Davis in it? Would that be a way to make your best ball team on DK a little bit different, or is that just stupid?
See, I think that construction is super interesting. Whether you go Diggs and Allen, because obviously Diggs' usage rate in that offense, last year was kind of down, but now you're taking away Beasley, you're taking away Sanders. People may be a little hesitant to go to Diggs, so I don't mind that stack. Also, like Jamison Crowder, who you can get very late. He really fits the PPR scoring on DraftKings. Dawson Knox is another chalk value piece. I'd probably go to Dalton Schultz over Dawson Knox, but I think Schultz might be, I don't know, they're right in the same range, but I think Dawson Knox probably get more steamed up as we kind of move towards the middle of the summer. But yeah, my preference would be going to Diggs and Allen, because I think that would give you a differentiated construction. And I also like Crowder late, and James Cook for that matter. I think James Cook's going to be an absolute stud.
And if James Cook, the main thing that everyone projects with him coming in is he's going to be so involved in the receiving game, he makes a lot of sense to put with Josh Allen. Do you think we've hit the peak of Gabe Davis ADP, Gabe Davis buzz, and now it's going to go back a little bit, like the pushback is finally going to happen, or does this just keep going out of control?
I think the markets are just going to keep going out of control, and that's why I think taking the leverage with a stack, like if you draft Diggs, you just stack him with Josh Allen, is very interesting to me.
It's strange because
it could regress.
Yeah, it could, but I'm just trying to think, like, if for best ball formats especially, and now all the value is baked at it if he's going pick like 47, 48, 49, whatever it is. And this is sort of the reason that I kind of stipulated the bet with Justin of Cook's total points versus Gabe Davis total points, that it just feels like there's going to be huge Gabriel Davis weeks. And for best ball, maybe that's enough, especially if they come later in the year when the field gets condensed. But it does feel like for a guy that you're taking so highly that there's going to be a lot of weeks that he doesn't make the optimal for your team.
No, that's what I'm saying. So differentiating it and taking a Diggs, if you're building the Bills stack, I think makes a ton of sense. Also taking the shot on James Cook, where James Cook, like if you're stacking him up, PPR running back, fits the DraftKings scoring, very like high variance player. Like I think he could be pretty much rookie of the year in that offense. So I'm very high on him. And just like the explosive plays that he offers, I don't know. Like if you're going back to like the Cooks versus Gabriel Davis debate, I think Cooks is where my money would be. Even though obviously Gabriel Davis could have the spike weeks, but then there's going to be weeks where Diggs is going to get that target share.
Do you have obviously in season long that can sink you, but in best ball, you might have ways to overcome that. Like, do you have a preference of a player in best ball of, do you want the spike week guy and then pray that you have enough bench depth in order to make up for the down weeks and pray that the spikes come in week 15, 16, and 17 when it matters the most?
I like the volatile player, but I also like guys who fit the scoring. So for DK especially, like I'm just trying to build my best ball teams pretty much like a high stakes GPP. So it's pretty much a cash game, high tournament hybrid, where I'm correlating. And basically when I'm doing that, I like the high variance guys. I like those receivers, but I also like to have some sort of a floor. That's why with Cooks, the usage is so concentrated and he can also have those spike weeks. Like it isn't like Brandon Cooks can't take one to the house for 50 or 60 yards anymore. You know what I mean? Like, so that's where I kind of side with the Cooks over Davis.
Terry McLaurin is sitting out minicamp. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. There's a lot of guys who are sitting out minicamp. And word out of Washington now is that Logan Thomas is likely to begin the year on the PUP list, so we might not get him right away. Do you have any interest in this Washington offense? Because I've heard a lot of people be like, yeah, Carson Wentz, big upgrade at quarterback. And I start thinking, is Carson Wentz a big upgrade at quarterback? Like, is this really going to make that big of a difference for anyone?
Yeah, so for me, it doesn't make that much of a difference. I don't think I'm going to be on much of these Washington guys. I would have had interest in Logan Thomas, but that knee injury, like it was it was more than just an ACL tear, it was ACL, MCL. Very tough knee injury for Logan Thomas. But in terms of the Terry McLaurin situation, I don't have much interest. I just don't. When you can get guys that are not tied to Carson Wentz, it's usually a plus. So
I'm just trying to find out where the value is going to be on that team, because it did appear like Antonio Gibson was going to be the guy. And then because McKissick was signing with the Bills. Then McKissick didn't sign with the Bills. McKissick comes back. Like right now, his ADP, Antonio Gibson, has been dropping pretty far. Like, would you still take the chance on him in, I guess, what would be the 6th round, 7th round on Antonio Gibson at this point? That, oh no, this was all just smoke the entire time. Antonio Gibson's a 20 touch per game player.
I don't think I would take the chance, but I think it is value. I'm just staring clear of like this Washington offense in general. I think McKissick could still eat in. It's just in the past, Carson Wentz hasn't been so keen to dump it off to the running back as much as we've seen McKissick be basically utilized. Obviously, Nyheim Hines last year, but it was more. I just don't really. I question Carson Wentz, and I question his aptitude to basically utilize a running back within an offense. So I guess that would be a bump to Gibson and a downgrade to McKissick, but McKissick's still there, and we really can't project out how Carson Wentz is gonna utilize his RB in a new offense. I think that's kind of galaxy braining it too at the same time. So I don't know. I'm just totally off this offense.
Are there other teams like that where you're just like, fuck it? Like, I don't want any part of this. I kind of went over this with like cheap stacks that are unreliable and probably not any good. But in the example that I brought up was Seattle. Not so much because Seattle's good. They're not. But if their defense shakes out to be kind of bad, they may just be forced to throw a ton. And obviously we don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be at this point, whether it's Locke or Geno, or they trade for Baker, or trade for Jimmy G, whoever might end up coming in to Seattle. But you're going to find very few offenses that are as concentrated as Seattle projects to be. Even with DK sitting out minicamp, even Pete Carroll's like, yeah, guys do this. Like, I wouldn't worry about that. But you have DK, you have Lockett, and you have Noah Fant. That seems to be the blueprint for their passing game. There are very few teams you can point to where it's 3 guys and that's it.
Yeah, the usage is super concentrated. Noah Fant late. Like, I don't hate taking a shot on Noah Fant. I wouldn't be like trying to get too many Seattle guys into my teams, but I think at Noah Fant's current ADP, he makes sense. And then Metcalf, like, he's a target monster. People aren't going to draft him. I have no problem being on him. I just wouldn't draft usually the 2 of them together. It'd probably be one or the other for me, and I'm not trying to stack them. I'm just banking on the usage within the offense.
Gronkowski has retired from the NFL for the 2nd time. Chances are this sticks by week 8.
Oh, I'd say less than 50. I think I that's just like the Patriots Gronkowski fan in me. It is the 2nd time retiring, so he's definitely put some thought into this. But I think he'll be back by week 8. Maybe that's a bad take, but I think he'll be back.
It just seems strange that no one is buying this retirement whatsoever.
Is there a contract stipulation like with the Bucks, like that if he plays this year, he has to is he like on for 2023 as well? Maybe he's trying to get out of that and then just trying to follow Tom wherever Tom goes in 2023. Maybe could be. I'm just trying to think around it, or maybe he's just done.
Maybe he's done, or maybe he just doesn't want to go to mini camp, and this entire team is geared towards the Super Bowl. They can probably get to the playoffs without him. They'll probably need him to win the Super Bowl, and maybe it's just all unspoken under the table types of agreements. Being like, look, just take the first 3 months off and come back. No big, like the old Roger Clemens, where it's like, yeah, don't worry, you don't have to pitch till June, and that'll be fine then.
No, yeah, I could definitely see it being that way. But why just make the retirement announcement? Couldn't you just say you were injured? Or maybe actually you probably couldn't do that with the NFL. So, yeah, maybe the retirement announcement is, it could be the reason why he decided to do that.
So I saw the news break, and then everyone's like, oh my God, I drafted so much Rob Gronkowski. That sucks. That's one of the perils of doing the early drafts, is that your guys, like you mentioned, Cam Akers might blow his Achilles, or Rob Gronkowski might randomly retire after you've put him on 60% of your best ball team. Shit happens. You have to live with it. You move on from it. But now we look at the tight end core for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Cameron Brate is like the clear one that stands out. He had all the red zone targets last year. Didn't really come to fruition on anything. Is he someone that you would now target in drafts, or is he a player who people just project to step into this Gronk role, see his role expand even more? There's no Chris Godwin around. It's going to be a great at least first 6 to 8 weeks for Cameron Brate. Or is he just Cameron Brate? And that could be anyone on this roster who just randomly gets on the field as a tight end.
If I was taking him, I'd probably take him as a flyer tight end. But if you look at his stat line last year, I think the highest, it was like 3 for 26 was his best stat line. So it's kind of rough. But now Gronk's basically out of the situation, and Tom Brady, it is a Tom Brady tight end. So I'd rather take a shot on Cameron Brate than tight end from a quarterback, a team that wasn't basically quarterbacked by Tom Brady. So if you're taking a flyer shot at the tight end possession, I don't mind Cameron Brate.
The issue now becomes is you were able to get him late, but now with this Gronk news and people wanting to stack with Brady and looking for the quote-unquote cheaper pieces, that his ADP is just going to get pushed up and up and up and up. It's not going to be unbuyable, but it's no longer cheap at the same time. It's not a last round flyer on Cameron Brate. You might have to invest like a 14th round pick here.
Yeah, so that is an issue. So if it gets to a point where it isn't value anymore, then I would not be taking a shot on Brate, which I think would definitely be the case once the markets adjust.
Well, the guy that everyone's taking the shot on Tampa Bay is someone who's never scored more than 4 career touchdowns in a season. It's Russell Gage. Chris Godwin's hurt. We don't know about Mike Evans, and a lot of like pushback on his ability to be like the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football. I kind of agree with people that I don't think that he is going to be the number 1 receiver in fantasy football, and he probably doesn't have that opportunity. That doesn't mean he can't be the number 4 best receiver in fantasy football based on his profile. And if everyone just thinks that these Gronk red zone targets are immediately just going to go to other tight ends, they may be mistaken when they see big body Mike Evans out there in the end zone just catching fade passes from Brady the entire time. I really like Mike Evans. I probably won't be talked off of that, but this Russell Gage stuff, it's a lot like the Gabe Davis stuff where he was a reasonable price, but now it just keeps going up and up and up and up. Do you like Russell Gage?
I like Gage, but I think you made a better case for Evans. Like, I think for Evans now, he's going to see those Gronk red zone targets, and that's what I want. I want touchdowns, and Evans obviously gives you the receptions. So I'd be more privy to like maybe taking more Evans than I currently have when everyone kind of jumps to Gage. I don't think Gage is a bad play. I think he'll fit fine in the offense, but I think that Evans for me would be the guy that I'm probably going to bump my exposure on.
Like, I know that they signed him for the good price. It's the best situation Gage has ever been in. Gage is a good player, but it's not a non-zero chance if all these guys make the team, whether it be Scotty Miller, Brashad Perriman, Tyler Johnson, sideshow Cyril Grayson. He's still currently on the roster. We'll see if he makes the team, but one of those guys could outscore Russell Gage. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility.
So, yeah, it's interesting, too, because Russell Gage is currently wide receiver 39. You have DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver 37, Hunter Renfrow, wide receiver 40, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver 41, Christian Kirk, wide receiver 42. If all the ownership's going to kind of condense on Gage, going other places for me would just be the route I would take. And like you said, you do have Scotty Miller, you do have Tyler Johnson. There are other ancillary pieces there that could eat into Gage. Yeah. So for me, my favorite pick out of Tampa Bay right now would be Mike Evans. And I think I'll be a little less on Gage because of just who's around him at his current ADP.
How do you feel about Chris Godwin? How do you assess that of not necessarily knowing when exactly he's going to be 100%, how they're going to work him in? Like, his ADP is still pretty high at the moment. Like, he's going around, Gabriel Davis is going slightly ahead of him now, but he's still going ahead of someone we just talked about, like Brendan Cooks. But we know what the obvious upside is with Godwin when he's right. It's just how much draft capital do you want to put in to Chris Godwin right now at this high of a price, not knowing exactly when he's going to be at full strength?
So I think we can leverage the unknown if the market's going to regress, which I think it is going to do. I'm going to have more Godwin just because we're playing for week 15 through 17. I don't really care about weeks 1, 2, or 3. I think my teams can kind of get through those type of situations, but I want to win. And Chris Godwin in the DraftKings format, just PPR wise, is going to be an absolute monster for this team when healthy. So I have no issue taking Godwin, and I think he'll be a value once the markets kind of reassess, and he's probably going to drop down in terms of ADP, and I'm fine with that because I'll get him at value.
And it'll be correlated too with Russell Gage going up, I would expect, because right now it's ADP 55 for Chris Godwin, ADP number 83 for Russell Gage. I think you're going to see the gap close between those two, especially over the next month or so. And if we don't get any sort of rumor on Godwin and what the timetable is going to be for him, because I think people look at it and say, no Gronk, no Godwin, and Antonio Brown is gone. All those targets are going to Russell Gage, which isn't true, but that's how people think.
Yeah, all those targets people think are going to go to Gage, and I'll just pivot to Godwin or Evans for that matter.
The Deshaun Watson news came out that he settled most of the cases against him. However, it has also been reported that this is going to have nothing to do with the suspension that he's likely to receive from the NFL. Do you have any particular take on how to assess Watson when it comes to a pure fantasy perspective? Not necessarily even drafting him, but the pieces that go around him. Because if Baker's on his way out, Watson's not playing, like, how effective is Amari Cooper if Jacoby Brissett is the quarterback?
Yeah, so for me, it would be Nick Chubb from this Cleveland offense, and that's literally about it. Like, I don't have interest in Amari just because of the uncertainty with Deshaun. Also, if Baker were to stay, like, I have no interest in Baker being a quarterback to a receiver I'm going to spend a high draft capital on. Like, just not worth it for me. And then the situation with Deshaun, if he plays or if it's so hypothetical, this is another team like I'm totally off outside of like some Nick Chubb. That's pretty much it for me.
So Watson doesn't fit the theory of let's try to leverage the unknown on this and maybe try to get lucky with the situation. Or do we kind of know what's going to happen? Likely 8 to 12 game suspension, maybe a year, and you could be left holding the bag with nothing on your rosters.
I think we kind of know. So it's not as much of an unknown situation as we think. So I don't want to be left holding the bag.
Okay. Treylon Burks, the trade A.J. Brown from Tennessee. They bring in Robert Woods, and then, Burks. So Burks is going to light it up. Everyone needs to draft Burks. Now the reports are coming out. He's working as the number 3 wide receiver on the team behind Nick Westbrook-Ikena and Robert Woods at this point. Austin Hooper is probably going to be somewhat of a target magnet here when Derrick Henry isn't carrying the ball. Is this... we've seen this play out a couple of times. This is the same report we saw about Justin Jefferson, his rookie year in Minnesota, that he was behind B.C. Johnson on the depth chart and Adam Thielen. And then we had all the Jamar Chase smoke last year. It's like, oh, the guy sucks. He's no good in the preseason. Is this now a buying opportunity on Burks, or are you legitimately concerned?
I've had no interest in Burks just because I didn't think that he would step in and be A.J. Brown. And that's where he was being drafted. And I just didn't see that situation coming to fruition. The NFL is not like the NBA. Rookies don't just step in. They kind of have to work and earn their role. I don't have much Treylon Burks. I doubt I have any, actually. So for me, I haven't been like too interested in the situation. I'd rather take another receiver in that range. Robert Woods, I think, is interesting if everyone's going to kind of go to Burks. His ADP is obviously later, and he could end up being the number 1 there. He's the veteran. It's how it kind of works out sometimes with these NFL teams.
Yeah, and Robert Woods is a great get for Tennessee from a real-life football perspective, with Robert Woods, even coming back off the injury, still one of the premier perimeter run blockers at receiver. And when you're a team that wants to run the ball as much as Tennessee, that's a very logical fit. The guy is never coming off the field. And if you're just always on the field and you're in there for even the play action with running off Derrick Henry, you're probably going to be open a whole lot of the time. So I like Robert Woods as well. I think you're going to see more people jump on the Robert Woods train as we go through. I do want to talk about A.J. Brown a little bit, though, because it feels like Devonta Smith, in the wake of A.J. Brown going to Philadelphia, has been kind of pushed out of sight, out of mind in a lot of places, like ADP 70 for Devonta Smith, 25 for A.J. Brown, 63 for Jalen Hurts. Like, I mean, are we crazy enough to think that Jalen Hurts can't be the number one quarterback this year? I know everyone has Josh Allen penciled in as QB1, but why can't it be Jalen Hurts?
I think it could be Jalen Hurts, especially in this offense. It's funny that Devonta Smith has kind of gone by the wayside just with the big play upside that he offers. And he's showed rapport with Jalen Hurts. A.J. Brown's going to step in. He's going to be the new piece in that offense. He's obviously going to be someone the coaching staff draws plays up for. I don't mind getting value on Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts stacks rather than taking the A.J. Brown piece, which I think a lot of people are going to gravitate to. I build very contrarian, so this is kind of the way, it's kind of thoughts that I have. If the markets are showing love to a certain situation and hypothetically the outcome or range of outcomes doesn't really quantify to the markets the steam a situation is receiving, then I'll go the other way. So I don't mind Devonta Smith. I think you're getting value at him for him at his current ADP. And Jalen Hurts as QB1, like, yeah, he definitely has the potential with the rushing equity. I don't know if I'd say QB1, but I could see him being within the top five. Like, right now he's currently 8. I could see him jumping up to 3 to 5. I think in terms of like QB3 or QB5. So I don't mind taking the shot on Jalen Hurts at all, especially with the rushing equity.
Well, with the stuff that comes along with the rushing equity are the touchdowns, the rushing touchdowns that come along with it. So if he slightly improves in the passing game and improves his numbers there just even a little bit, and then gets very lucky in terms of touchdown upside this year. Like we've seen it happen with Cam Newton over the years, where one year he'll rush for 10 touchdowns, and the year before that he had rushed for 1. Everyone's like, oh, well, he doesn't rush for touchdowns anymore. But some of this stuff is so fickle when you're rushing the ball near the goal line. It's like Josh Allen. Josh Allen might have the exact same amount of red zone rushing attempts in the regular season this year, but score 75% fewer touchdowns, because that's just the way that it turns out in some of these situations where Hurts could go the other way. It would have to be a situation like that, I think, where you could propel him up to QB1.
He'd probably have to beat Kyler and Lamar to get it. Yeah,
but I am dubious about Kyler running. I really am, because he runs for a bit, he gets somewhat nicked up, then doesn't run anymore. Lamar's always going to run. That's just a part of his game. But Kyler seems like they really try to hold him back from the rushing attack outside like the first 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I worry about Kyler and going forward in the NFL, just with the height issues, and then obviously his slight of stature. Has a very interesting Week 17 matchup. Kyler does. Cardinals at Falcons in a dome. Hopkins, you're getting at a value. I know I'm just kind of jumping from the Jalen Hurts conversation to basically if Jalen Hurts could be a QB1 or Kyler Murray. But yeah, I don't know. I think Jalen Hurts could outscore Kyler Murray. I think he could get, if he's QB6, currently Kyler Murray's QB5. I don't know. Yeah, he could get to QB1 with the rushing equity. He'd have to beat Allen, Mahomes, and Herbert. But yeah, I don't see, it's in the range of possibilities. He can definitely leapfrog Lamar and Kyler, I think.
It feels like people are kind of off Herbert, because coming into the draft season, it was like, oh, Herbert, Chargers, let's go. And then since it's kind of dipped back a little bit. I don't know why people have soured on the Chargers so much, where they're not like this elite offense anymore and everyone needs to have Herbert stacks on their teams, and they've kind of gone other directions. It just become a thing that everyone did at the very beginning, and now it's like, yeah, well, I've done that. I need to put my exposure somewhere else now. Like, is there a reason behind it?
I think the Chargers stacking options aren't as sexy. Like Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Chase. I'd rather have Chase or T. Higgins. I'd rather have Diggs or Gabriel Davis. And I think that's why Herbert's kind of fallen by the wayside. But I love Herbert. I think he's a great real life QB. He's a great fantasy QB. You get a great Week 17 matchup. That seems to be the thing. Week 17, Rams at Chargers. I could see that total being around like 53. So if they're going to go undervalued, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Herbert, I don't mind. I don't see why getting to the Chargers would be a bad idea. Also, Austin Eckler. Offense is just great in general. So I could see Herbert finishing QB1. Like, why not?
QB1? Will he run it? Will he run enough for that?
He does run. QB1 probably a hot take, but could you see Herbert versus Mahomes? Who would you take Herbert versus Mahomes?
I would take Mahomes, but I don't think those prices are comparable at the moment, are they? Because it seems like Herbert has fallen back a bit. I think I would just take whoever goes later, and that would be Herbert at the moment.
Current ADP for Herbert is 44. Current ADP is 40. They're right around the same ADP. This is going off 404 right now. So I don't know. I don't hate Herbert. I'm not the biggest Mahomes guy. I know Mahomes is a stud, but he falls by the wayside for me in terms of QB play as crazy as that's. I'm more on Allen, Burrow, Herbert, Stafford, Brady. I just rather the piece. I like the pieces around them better.
Well, I think if you go with Herbert, to build around him is just way more expensive because you have Eckler who's going in the top 10 picks. And even though there's been, people don't love the sexiness of Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, it's not like those guys are going low at all. Where if you go with Mahomes and you can get it right with Kansas City of who the guys are going to be outside of Kelsey, everyone else is a pretty reasonable price tag.
Yeah, everyone else is a pretty reasonable price tag. It's just, for me, I think I'd prefer going the Herbert route. I just don't love I know Juju's getting steamed up. I know Ben is someone that he obviously was struggling. I just don't think that the weapons that they have outside of Kelsey are guys that I'm going to target. The one Kansas City option that I really like on DK, and I've been stashing a bunch of prior to them re-signing him, was Jerick McKinnon, just because of how the DK scoring system works. But it'd probably be Kelsey and McKinnon for me out of the Kansas City offense. I understand that this team's going to put up a ton of points. I get it. It's a Mahomes-led offense, but I'm less than the market in terms of like my love for KC. And yeah, you're paying a little bit more for Keenan and Mike and Herbert stacks, but I think I prefer the Chargers side.
If you were to take another piece of the Chargers stack, either a tight end or a tertiary receiver, would it be Josh Palmer? Would it be Gerald Everett? Would it be Parham, Guyton? Do you have a preference between any of those guys?
Josh Palmer's been working in as the wide receiver 3, so he'd probably be the guy to have the most interest in. Gerald Everett, I don't hate it as well. I think Gerald Everett's a really good player, so I don't mind him. Yeah, they have weapons. This team is absolutely loaded on the offensive side of the football, so I don't mind any of these Chargers. I think those guys are quality that could become quality value pieces in an offense that's going to be top 5 in the league. So I don't mind those guys. If
you were to do it on Kansas City, who do you think the right people after Kelsey would be to pair with Mahomes? I am not in on Juju, so it wouldn't be Juju for me. I think his cost is just way too high at pick number 58, where he's going at the moment. Insane. But then you have Sky Moore and you have Marquez Valdez. No one wants a piece of Marquez Valdez Scantling, who I know what his skill set at least is perceived to be by what he did in Green Bay, but maybe he's just not necessarily a different player, but maybe the Chiefs utilize him a bit differently, and he's like pick 100. He seems like a very good piece to go with Mahomes, even over Sky Moore.
Yeah, I would prefer MVS to Sky Moore. Like I said, Juju, I'm down on Juju. Kelsey, I like Kelsey. He's obviously the usage monster. Jerick, like I said, Jerick on PPR formats, you get him very late. He'd probably be the 4th he'd probably be behind Sky Moore, but obviously just I would take him later on just because he fits the scoring system. But yeah, MVS could do well in this offense based on his skill set. I just have a bad taste in my mouth for MVS that could be recency bias that could come back to bite me with how Kansas City decides to utilize him. Maybe it's different than how he was utilized in Green Bay. And he did show promise later on in the year in Green Bay. So maybe he's evolving, and maybe Mahomes will just help him evolve and help him make that transition into a quality NFL player. So you have to think about those things.
Let's go to the Jets, because Breece Hall continues to be pumped up as a top 20 running back right now. And the reports out of Jets camp is that Hall is going to be the Batman to Michael Carter's Robin. And ADP is reflecting that right now. I talked about this with Jake Seeley about a month ago when we were ranking all of the rookie running backs. And yeah, Hall seems like he has a great situation on his hands. But I don't know if I think people might be a bit over their skis with how good this Jets offense is going to be. Do we really want a Jets running back inside the top 20 when you could have a guy who was good for them last year, already knows the system, has the familiarity, and might actually work a lot in the passing game as well? Like, it's not to take away from Hall. I know they spent draft capital on him, but it wouldn't be the first time that we've seen a team spend draft capital on a running back and then maybe not use him as much as that draft capital would dictate.
Yeah, it's a wait and see thing for me. This Jets offense, I think it's getting steamed up, like you said. They had a great draft, obviously. But it just comes down to, do I want Jets players on my roster? Right now, I don't have any Breece Hall. I know it just doesn't seem like, even Michael Carter, I don't see the reasoning to take them. I'd be more interested in the wide receivers, whether it's more who, I don't know, even Zach Wilson, wide receiver. I just think Zach Wilson's going to take a step forward. I don't think it's going to be a great step forward, but Elijah Moore, I think, is someone I'd have somewhat interest in. He'd probably be the only Jets receiver outside of Garrett Wilson. I love Garrett Wilson. I think he's going to be fantastic. But I think that a lot of people are going to go to Garrett Wilson when you could just go to Moore. So those would be the two Jets that I have the most interest in, and not really on the Breece Hall train as of right now.
There are reports that Cam Akers is now back to 100% after his horrible efficiency, returning very quickly from an Achilles injury last winter during the playoffs. I don't think I can really hold that against him. The guy came back from an Achilles injury and didn't look like he was 100%. Big fucking shocker. But now he has time to the offseason to continue to rehab, and if he truly is back at 100%, he's going at pick number 45 right now. Before he blew out his Achilles in drafts last season, how high was he going?
He was going extremely high. He was the value running back that everyone was taking, kind of like the Gabe Davis of this year. For me, if Gabe Davis as being the chalk this year, I think Cam Akers would have been the chalk running back last year had he not tore his ACL. That's why it's so hard to play these chalk pieces, because so many things can happen in the timeline that we're trying to project out. I don't hate Cam Davis because I think so many people are uber bullish on this passing game. Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp, Stafford, and Cam Akers. Sorry, Cam. I think that Cam Akers is someone that can kind of leverage that. So he's someone I'm interested in that offense. Darrell Henderson's another one. I think Cam Akers is definitely at a value at this point. So he's someone I'm interested in on getting on my best ball teams.
See, I like Cam Akers a lot in this spot. He's going at approximately the same ADP as Allen Robinson is, which just seems insane to me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's why I think Cam Akers is a very good play. People are going to go the passing game is for the Rams is so it's extremely hyped. So going to the running game where that's kind of been within the 10-yard line, they're one of the most efficient teams running the football. So I don't mind taking a shot on a guy like Cam Akers for that reason alone when everyone's kind of looking at the passing game.
And reports at a Jags camp, there's some pretty hilarious reports this time of year. I saw one that one was Cole Kmet could see more red zone targets. That was an actual report that came out. Really, he could. That would be great news for Cole Kmet if he could see more red zone targets. Will he? Oh, we don't know about that, but he could see them. This one is James Robinson could be the 3-down back once he returns from his injury, which we don't know when he's going to return from his injury or not. It seems like this sort of news just pushes down the stock of Travis Etienne, and that's where I still think I want to be on the. You talk about the DraftKings scoring being set up. We have no idea what Etienne's going to be as an NFL option, whether it's going to be a full-time running back, whether it's going to be half running back, half slot receiver. How is he going to be utilized as distribution between passing and catching? But it does seem like catching is going to be a huge part of his game, doesn't it?
No, it definitely does. And they're going to utilize him like this. It's total turnover from the previous whole coaching staff that they had going on there. Absolute nightmare last year in Jacksonville. So I think they're going to try to right their wrong, so to speak, and utilizing ETN, it would be the first way to do that. Right. So taking ETN, if this James Robinson news kind of makes the market a little bit less bullish on him and you're able to get him at somewhat of a value, I think he's a guy that you take a shot on.
Well, the only reason I bring it up is Robinson's going at pick number 168 right now, and Etienne's going at pick number 44, which is one spot before Cam Akers, which I thought was really surprising. I'd rather have Cam Akers, just straight up, rather have Cam Akers and take that upside. Not that I'm down on Etienne. Maybe it's just I'm too high on Cam Akers, and I do think that the market is way below where you need to be on him right now for what the upside was. If he was a top 10 pick last year and he got hurt, even when he came back for the first few weeks, it's like, oh yeah, they're going to mix him in. It's like, no, let's give Cam Akers the ball over and over and over. He is one of the few guys that I can see with a plus 75% snap share out of backfields. And if you're playing in that offense, it seems like a very valuable piece to your fantasy roster to have the running back and the goal line back on the team that could score the most touchdowns in football. Just call me crazy. That's how I feel about it. But this ETN thing, probably not as good of an offense, obviously, but if he can make it up through the receiving game, that would be huge. I would like to see him drop 10, like basically a round. If I can get him around later, and I think that this James Robinson news could push him down, then I could think about it that way. But there's all this talk about like dead zone at running back. This is where you pick up your stacks, rounds 4, 5, and 6 to pair with your quarterback, your 4th and 5th wide receivers. Do you buy into the fact that there truly is a running back dead zone, or has the evolution of how these drafts go and receivers being so important just push better running backs down the board now?
I do buy into the fact that I think there's a running back dead zone, and getting him 10 picks later relative to in that Akers slot and David Montgomery, who I'm pretty high on. I know Breece Hall's in there too. I'd rather take the shot there. Is there a dead zone? Of course. For me, I just take the best player available and try to make the most efficient picks that I possibly can. If this does knock ETN down, then I'll weigh it and think if I want to take a shot on him, I think I would in this scenario. Cam Akers, though, I'm just trying to figure out, I don't think he's getting nearly – maybe I could be wrong and just misjudging the market, but I would be more bullish on Cam Akers in this slot right here, just because of last season and just kind of how things shook out. I think you just leverage some sort of recency bias relative to the best ball streets and hope for the best. And he's in a really good spot in that Rams offense. It
just strikes me as odd that there's almost a 35 pick gap between where he was going last year and where he's going this year. And the only difference is, he had a serious injury. He did come back and he wasn't as good, like I said, as expected, returning in that short of a timetable. But that gap just doesn't make sense to me, where you have other guys coming off of serious injuries and they're just like, listen, I know Christian McCaffrey's the best fantasy player there is, and you can take him at number 1. No one's going to scoff at that. But the guy's been banged up each of the past 2 years. Hasn't hurt his ADP at all. We know what Akers can do, yet there's it's not even really a tax. People are taxing him because he missed last year, which is, I don't know, it just seems really strange to me.
It's because everyone's on this passing game. Everyone's on Cup. Everyone's on Robinson. Everyone's on Stafford. And that's where you get a little leverage taking that running back. So I don't mind taking Akers if you're getting that much of a discount relative to last season.
Let's close with this, because you've brought it up a few times, and I don't think that people necessarily understand why this is important. I think they can conceptually understand why ownership in DraftKings Best Ball would be important. But why would there ever be a need? Because this is a season-long tournament. Your lineup is never going to be duped, and that's probably true. But can you explain to people why ownership matters in DraftKings Best Ball, and maybe getting off of a chalky guy could be a huge leverage spot even in a season-long format?
Yeah, just because a guy you're taking, it's such a long year to project out, and if a guy's going to be extremely steamed up, so many things can happen, and if he's going to be like 30% owned and you can leverage that and you eliminate 30% of the field, like we don't root for injuries, but things can happen. Utilization within an offense can change. And it's very hard to like basically say this guy, like anyone can say, oh, he's a good player, but if anything can go wrong. So if you can eliminate a certain part of the field, and I think you take that opportunity when you can. And I think that's just goes for any type of DFS or best ball, or just any type of format within these tournament structures for daily fantasy sports or best ball or whatever. Well, I feel like that was a horrible way of kind of giving an explanation. But.
Well, let's try to round it out this way. Like, obviously, he's going to be 100% drafted in every league that drafts. Someone's going to draft Gabriel Davis. But what you're talking about is playing against the people either in a 20 max or 150, whatever it might be, that they're going to own 30 to 40%. Like, he is a target of a lot of people who are. Yeah. And you're more concerned, I'm assuming, as someone who's going to max out all these contests, you're far more concerned with the people that are also maxing it out, not the guy who's throwing in a team into something like this.
So I think the majority of people that are maxing out this contest are probably going to be under on Gabe. Just if you look at how 150 maxers play, like usually the chalk, unless it's definitively good chalk, the majority of them the good ones at least are taking an underweight stance. And just to project that out, like that's just a single game DFS slate. Like this is a 17 game season. So being under on the chalkiest play, I think is the best strategy. But I could be proved wrong, right? Like this is a new kind of format. It's only been really 4 years doing best ball. There's a couple, but just like, that's just the way I'm kind of my brain works. So that's kind of how I'm doing it. But things like Gabe Davis could have a tremendous season. Like he's a great play, you know what I mean? But just taking the off chance that he might not, you kind of leverage the field in that sense, and construction, which I think is the biggest thing.
Well, and that's been so much of where your success has come from, is being able to figure out the best way to construct lineups and leverage that against the field. I mean, there's a reason that you won a Millionaire Maker, if trying to figure these things out before the field can catch up. Do you think, and just to talk just pure DraftKings DFS for a second, do you think that there's going to be a shift? Because everyone always talks about every year, oh, it's figured out. It's never figured out, is it?
No, it's never figured out. That's why I feel like it shouldn't be like so like fixed in on maybe I have to be underweight on Gabe Davis. Like that could be the wrong take. What I think is interesting is like right now it's kind of like the midpoint where the markets are getting sharper. Like I usually try to draft in the beginning and then at the end for my best ball teams. Just because like the better player is able to react to news and make changes ahead of the market. So I think that, and even on a DFS slate, like that's some of the most important, like that window between 11:30 and 1, when we get that news, people that are able to make that adjustment or in that time frame correctly are usually the ones that perform really well on the slate. So I think it's similar to best ball, it's just projected out longer. And right now is kind of a tough time because it's kind of a dead zone. Like teams don't kind of hit the field for practice for like another month. So I don't know, just in terms of getting leverage, I don't think games are figured out, but I think just when you're 150 maxing the majority of the time, I try to figure out what the bad chalk is. Not that I think Gabriel Davis is the bad chalk, but taking an underweight stance, I think makes sense at his current ownership, what I think his current ownership level is going to be.
Bobby Gomes. You can follow him on Twitter at Bobby Gomes DFS. This was fun. I love chatting with you, dude.
Yeah, it was good. Good time. Nice to be on with you. Thanks for hitting me up to do this.
Yeah, of course. When you can talk to successful people doing this, I feel like it's a lot better than having the advice come from me, who hasn't won shit in something like this. And talking to you really helps.
You're good. You're good. You know your stuff.
Yeah, but there's a big difference, and you can probably speak to this too. There's a lot of people that know a lot of stuff. They're very sharp when it comes down to, hey, I can make this projection, I can make this prediction, and this is going to be right. Oh, this is a good play. This is a good fade. And I feel like I'm okay with that stuff. But actually implementing that into lineups, into actual strategy, putting it into practice, I find exceptionally hard. And I think there's a lot of people who find that incredibly difficult.
No, I agree with you. But that's the name of the game, right? Like, I feel like a lot of people can talk it, but you have to be able to play it too, right? So it's just a matter of putting it all together, I guess.
Yeah, and maybe this will be my year. Probably not, but maybe it'll be my year. For more fantasy football content as we get ready for major draft season, I'll have Sealy and Leone on over the next few weeks. We're doing running back rankings, top 150. Everything like that is coming down the pike soon, but we gotta get these teaser episodes out now so we can talk through a lot of these situations. You can hit the full draft kit up on Mayo Media Network and the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. Hit the description or the comment section right now, and you can find links to every show about the NFL that has been out so far in 2022. Remember to smash the like button on the way out as well. Thank you all for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!